Okay, so this is my website, the Cheverly Good Life, and there is a 4-part series on there. If you go to the CheverlyGoodLife.com, it's right at the top of the page, and that 4-part series, the first section talks about just sort of a summary of what we've discussed tonight. Part 2 is from, I think, 2018. Somebody that appealed very nicely sent me a very, very detailed synopsis of what she learned in doing the appeal and what different things meant and so forth. And it was pretty helpful. Part 3 is I'm talking about property tax assessments, and that why you may, if you think you might sell in the next 3 years, why you may decide, even if you're being protected by the homestead tax credit, you may still want to look at your assessment, because your new buyer has to pay the full amount. The homestead tax credit doesn't apply to them. And part 4 is just chock full of data. There's a spreadsheet there. There's a sample. In part 4, somebody was very kind. It was probably Mike Callahan, a former mayor, who gave us a sample of a letter that they used in a successful appeal. So there is a sample there. There's a spreadsheet in part 4. It is an Excel spreadsheet. If you have an older version of Excel and you can't open it, just call me. I'll give you a backwards dated whatever version of it. In this spreadsheet, I have excluded distressed sales. Right now, we just had one last year that was literally the whole house was boarded up and was not livable. So that's been dropped off. In the spreadsheet, I have rated each property based on my opinion of where it falls in condition. A 4 means it was renovated or flipped relatively soon prior to its sale. It wasn't flipped 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It was really recent. A house that I've rated as a 3, it's like, it's a scale. So it's more updated than not. And a 2 it's less updated. So, the way most of us live in our homes, if the refrigerator breaks, we go out and replace the refrigerator. We don't go, oh, I think now I will completely renovate my kitchen. At least that's the way I live in my house, right? Joseph's going, yep. So it's kind of a sliding scale. You may look at that and say, oh, well, I'm looking at a house that is less updated than not. And you might say, well, I think that house is actually pretty updated, and SSTAT might disagree with me as well. That's a possibility. These are just my opinion, and I consider them a starting place. That's the actual spreadsheet. So it's all sortable. You can go in and sort by square footage, by price, by number of bedrooms and bathrooms, all kinds of the year it was built. You can go in and collect that data. And sometimes you're going to need to do 2 or 3 sorts just to get to the square footage and the number of bathrooms and the finished basement and if it has a garage and so forth in order to get them lined up. But that spreadsheet is available to you. If you've been on the website and downloaded information before, I've added some new links there. One of them is a link to the public records through the MLS of those same properties. Because like I said, there are some real estate agents out there who will add the basement square footage and the above grade square footage so that it'll show up on Zillow as more square footage than it really is. And so if you go in, you can look at the tax record and see how that actually breaks out. So the next thing I want to talk about, this is actually sort of the last thing I want to talk about, was how do you offset some of this property tax increase? Well, if your property is an investment property, you really want to look closely at your assessed value, because you don't have a lot of protection from big increases, not like those of us who own the home that we live in. But the first tax credit is the homeowner's tax credit. And that's if your gross household income, these are state credits. If your gross household income is $60,000 or less, then you can apply for the homeowner's tax credit. If you've applied for it, you can actually see it on the SDAT website. It'll tell you if that tax credit is in effect. The second one is the homestead tax credit. That's the one that most of us that own the home we live in, we should have the homestead tax credit. But I'm going to tell you, go check. Make sure you're actually getting it. Because somebody reached out to me the other day and asked if they had their homestead, if I could check for them, and I did. And it said that they had been denied. And I said, well, has it been an investment property? She said, no, we've always lived in this house for like 10 or 15 years. I said, then you need to call them and find out why it was denied. There are a lot of reasons why there could be an assumption made or something that could end up being denied. Go check. The other thing is that a lot of people have made the assumption that, oh, I didn't bother applying for the homestead tax credit because I thought it was income-based. The only criteria is you in the house for a year. A year including July 1. That you own it and you live in it. And you only have to apply for it once. So it's worth going on to the SDAT website, scroll down to the bottom, and look for the homestead tax credit. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a cap on the income for that? Or cap on your income?
For the homestead?
Yes.
It's not based off the income. For the homestead tax credit, you just apply for it. You have to live in your property as for a year. It kicks in for a year after you're in there for a year, including a July 1. The homeowner's tax credit is based off of your income. And that one you have to apply for every year. The homestead, you don't have to apply for it.
So
except for the one time.
when you get your tax credit, when you get your assessment, there's 2 pages. One's front and back, and one's there's nothing on the back. That one has right down the side all your state tax credits that can help offset your property tax increase. And that talks about the homeowner's tax credit and the homestead tax credit. I'm going to take the next several ones together. If you're a 100% disabled veteran or the surviving spouse of a 100% disabled veteran, a disabled veteran who is currently on active duty or the surviving spouse of active duty military personnel who died in the line of duty, the state of Maryland says, thank you for your sacrifice, thank you for your service, you don't have to pay any top property taxes. But you do have to apply. And then the last one is if you're a blind person or the surviving spouse of a blind person, you are exempt from $15,000 of the property's assessed value, and you have to apply for it.
There is one more credit that you have on there.
What's that?
Medical.
There's one that's not, and it's not on your list.
We do also have a medical credit where, say your property, based off of your health issues, you had to do an addition on there, on your house, because your house, all the bedrooms and bathrooms were upstairs, and you no longer could get upstairs. So you had to do this little addition to put a bathroom and a bedroom down there. We add that to the records, but then we credit you for the amount of that value of that addition. So you're not going to be taxed on that addition because it's a medical necessity. If you have to have a swimming pool put in for physical therapy, you don't get taxed on that swimming pool because it's a medical necessity. You have to have your doctor's note stating it when you apply, but you would not get taxed on that part. So, well, we don't assess for hot tubs. You can have as many hot tubs as you want, and we will not charge you for that. No saunas either.
So I lied. It is right here. An improvement to a building required for the health or medical condition of the resident of the building may not be assessed for tax purposes. So it's right here on the sheet. Just wasn't under property tax credit, so I missed it. Prince George's County.
Oh, I was going to mention that I think you had the senior's tax credit.
Okay, we're going into, that's Prince George's County. Prince George's County also has some local tax credits. The first one is there's a new senior tax credit. That just went into effect July 1st of last year, and it will provide up to a 20% credit of the county property taxes, but it includes your homestead tax credit and your homeowner's tax credit. So what we're finding is that a lot of people aren't qualifying for the senior tax credit because they're already maxed out on the homestead tax credit. So Councilwoman Ivy, I've lost it. Councilwoman Ivy sent out, somebody asked a question, oh here it is, right in front of me. Somebody asked on Cheverly Exchange about the homeowner's tax credit, and she's our current chair of the county council. And she said, we're in the process of considering a bill to amend this tax credit. Currently, if you already received the homestead tax credit, you may not be able to benefit from this one too. Right now, it's estimated that the cost to the county would be about $10 million, and we're facing a significant budget deficit. So we have to figure out how to make it work. So talk to your county council members and let them know that you're really in favor of them making some kind of change to this so that it can apply to more people. The next.
What does senior mean?
Okay, to be eligible, you have to be 65 and over, own and reside at the property for at least the previous 10 years, and the assessed value can't exceed $500,000 at the time of application, and the application has to be made by October 1st. I qualify on all of them. So yeah.
To do with that credit, I applied for that, but I never got it. I got an acknowledgement online that I applied and never heard anything after that.
You'll need to reach out to the department. I can't help you on that one. But you could probably get a business card.
And I can help check into it. I do know that they were behind, and some people still don't have the credit on their tax bill sheet.
Yeah, I will say that the department is quite busy right now because of all of this. So the second one is an accessibility features tax credit, and that one says that you may receive a property tax credit against the county portion of your tax bill for the installation of an accessibility feature. It has to have been installed within the previous 12 months, and there, if you go online, it'll tell you what qualifies. And again, it's so the credit allowed is the lesser of 50% of the eligible costs, or $2,500. I'm going to skip the agricultural land one. The next one is alternative energy, and that's for solar or geothermal, so you may get a tax credit for that. The surviving spouse of a fallen officer, a law enforcement or rescue worker, there's a tax credit you may be able to get for that. Again, all of these have to be applied for. The improvements to historic resources, that doesn't apply to very many homes in town. Full disclosure, I am a commissioner on our county's Historic Preservation Commission, and so when somebody does apply for these tax credits, I'm one of the ones that hears that one. And that's for improvements to historic properties. And then, so the last two, conservation land and landfill credit, I'll kind of skip those. Those are all available online, and the information there's a link to it all on my website. There's a federal one that I think probably kicks in for a lot of people, and that is if you make certain energy efficient improvements to your home, after January 1st of 2023, you may qualify for a tax credit of up to $3,200. And then there's, you can get claims for improvements made through 2032. And then for older improvements, there's a different form to fill out, and that information is also available. But if you're doing energy, if you're putting in Energy Star appliances and so forth, then it may be worth moving forward on that. So I'm back to important dates. As I said, February 12th is the last date to get appeal the market value of your property. But April 15, they said if you're applying for that homeowner's tax credit, the one where your income doesn't exceed $60,000, they ask that you do it by April 15th so that it can show up on the next bill. And I suspect that's true of a lot of the tax credits. Get it in by April 15 if you're applying for one of those other tax credits so that it can be calculated on the bill that comes out in July.
What about the homestead? Is there a deadline for that one?
There's not a deadline for that. The criteria, if you apply in March, it would not kick in until the following March because you have to be there a year, including a July 1. So you'll cross over July 1, so the following March, so it wouldn't show up, say you applied this year, it wouldn't show up until 2025 if you qualify for it. And that is to offset the increase of your assessment. So if the assessment doesn't increase, then you wouldn't get a credit that year, but you might get it the following year. And it all depends on the value of your property, on how much that homestead credit is based off of the cap of the county also. And
So, I was just going to say that your bill is, there's the state property tax, the county property tax, the municipal property tax, in our case Cheverly, and then there's stormwater fees and so forth. The homestead tax credit says that the state portion of the tax bill is capped, the payment, not the assessment, but the payment can't go up more than 10%. The county portion can't go up more than 4% for Prince George's County. And the Cheverly portion, the municipal portion, can't go up more than 10%. So it's not even a straight across the board, oh, this is going to be easy to figure. No, you got to go in and look at each one and figure out where you are. And my tax credit, one year it's here, one it's here. It bounces all over the place, but I'm grateful to have it. I will tell you, if you have not applied because you figure, oh, I have a year, I just bought my house, apply now. What it will say at the bottom of your SSTAT page online is it will say that the application has been received. Then you're good. Then you don't have to do anything else. It'll kick in when the time is right.
Yeah, so we applied for the homestead credit in 2022. Our application just keeps saying pending. We tried to call and email you guys multiple times, and never got any call back.
You need her business card.
I'll get your business card, but would that also help us when we're appealing to say, like, hey, we tried to do the homestead credit, but
That's not going to affect your appeal, but I'm glad you brought that up because if you appeal your property value
and it doesn't go below what that cap amount, taxable cap assessment is, then you're not going to see a change in your tax bill because that's what gets adjusted first. People are not aware of that, so we try to let them know your assessment might say $350,000, but because you have a homestead, you're only being taxed on $250,000. That's where that homestead kicks in. So unless we reduce that value below the $250,000, you would not see a difference in your tax bill. And that's where a lot of people get misunderstood on it. So we try to explain that during the appeal process. Not to say don't appeal. especially if there's things wrong on, you know, your worksheet, we're missing something or we're over assessing you for something, please appeal. And you can even put your appeal in so you don't lose that right, and then take your time to go over everything. You know, because you don't, if you're one day late, you're late. And that's just, by law, we have no choice. So I tell people, file your appeal and then take your time to look at everything. That way you don't miss those rights.
So, I want to turn the microphone over to Robin. Yep, come up here, Robin. This is Robin Kaye. Hi, everybody. I'll stand up so you can see me.
So I'm a longtime Cheverly resident, been here 20 plus years. And I have personal property, but I also own investment properties in town as well. Back in 2015, I got an assessment off of one of my investment properties that was off the charts. And I looked into the appeals process at the time and just was very intimidated by the whole thing, and I didn't appeal. And I thought maybe over time this will kind of like even out. But then in 2018, the assessment at that time was even way higher. And I thought, okay, I need to do something, but still was kind of scared of the whole process. At that time, I think a lot of people's assessments soared. And so Susan put together the first kind of workshop like this one tonight, explaining this process and giving out all this information, including her very handy spreadsheet that she provides on her website with all of the comps from the last year in Cheverly. And after learning about the process, like y'all have heard tonight, finding out that it's not adversarial at all, it's a very friendly, informal process, I was actually inspired to give it a shot. So this is just my experience. It sounds like there's other people in this room who already expressed they've had experience. I just did that first level of appeal using Susan's information on the website. Before my appeal date, I made my own little Excel spreadsheet, finding the properties that were most similar in type, size, condition, and age. And coming up with a few comps in that column that I would say are most like my property, which reflected kind of a lower value than what they assessed. I also did the converse of that, where based on the value of what they assessed me, I looked at the comps that Susan had provided to find similar homes to that price to show how ludicrous it was that my home was assessed at that value, and it's nowhere near the condition or type of those types of properties. And both ends of that argument actually was very helpful. There were also, the first time I appealed and got the comps that were used, at that time, 2 of the 3 were not in Cheverly. So that was a very low-hanging fruit to argue that these were not Cheverly comps. But since then, I would say that they've always used Cheverly comps. It's just that, with my property, it's not very much updated, and then they're using comps that have been highly renovated, like the ones that Susan is rating a number 4, renovated and flipped, and to say, well, these are not comparable. And I provided that information in my appeal and had a very friendly conversation. Both times I've appealed. I'm going to appeal again this time as well, same property. And I would say both times I would rate my appeals as success. You might have a different measure of success, but I feel like they still increased my assessment, but not nearly as high as was originally assessed. So that to me is a win, and I did not carry it further to the next level of appeal. It sounds like someone else in here had, so this.
I don't recommend the second level. I do recommend the third level. The second level.
Unfortunately, you have to go to the
Yeah.
second level before you go to the third.
Well, you do have to go through all the levels to get to that, but
Only goes to her office, you hit the message button, or goes to the tax court.
so that's my experience. It sounds like there's people who have taken the process further than I have, but even just from a very low level of effort, I really didn't spend a whole lot of time on this. Really just, Susan sets up a nice spreadsheet that you can not only sort, but you can filter. So that's also key. You can kind of filter on certain things. If you're only looking at colonials or you're only looking for Cape Cods, you can
filter it down, parse out the information you need, and just kind of make your own little spreadsheet of, this is my property, and here's a few comps that I think are very similar to mine in age and type and condition. And that's just very helpful in making your case and making it very clear to the person that you're speaking with. I did mine over the phone. This year I probably will choose online. That wasn't an option before. But it's very easy, not much effort. Go ahead and try and request an appeal online. You get your worksheet. You have to kind of check the box, say I want my worksheet, and just get the information and see what's involved. And as Susan mentioned, you can always just change your mind and not go through with it, but at least you have the information to make your decision. So that's my experience. Good luck to all of us in trying to. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Robin moved here in I can't even get it right. 2001, yeah. So I'm going to finish up with a couple of the questions that y'all didn't think of, but people at the last one thought of. A couple people asked at the last one, how will the new hospital project affect our assessments? And Wanda gave the exact same answer that I did, which is we don't know, because once it's complete, then maybe we'll see if it has an impact on our properties. But I'm guessing it may not have it, because it's going to end up being residential and it's going to be whatever, yeah. And we won't be comparing our properties now. If it's a really popular place and it affects all of our values because people want to move here because they want to be near it, then that may have an effect. This one I thought this one really shocked me. I mean, it just really did. Of those who appealed, what percentage were successful in Cheverly, and what was the actual number of appeals? She said within the past 3 years, they had 68 appeals with approximately 90% reduced.
Whoa.
I think that speaks volumes. People want to know about land value versus the improvements. So we look at the sales of vacant land and also sales of improved sites, 25% land, 75% building, to determine if the land value needs to be increased. We then look at the improved property sales to determine what the market is doing per neighborhood. So they really aren't looking a whole lot at land unless there is a big increase there. The question was answered tonight, but it's a big question, which is if I appeal and it turns out that my property is now, my assessment goes up, is that going to affect my value? It may affect it in the next cycle. But one of the things I learned is that, I don't even want to put this out into the universe. Maybe I shouldn't say. If we had like another 2008 where everything crashed and the market values plummeted like they did in 2008, then SDAT may do a reassessment mid-cycle. Oh, I got that one right. Yeah, that I thought was pretty important. Now, what happens if you miss the appeal deadline? So our deadline is the 12th of February, but you can appeal in any year by the end of the year, and a new hearing will be scheduled into the next year. So you do have a shot at reappealing if you miss it. Correct?
And we also send you out a letter stating you were untimely for this year, which gives you the appeal rate to this gentleman's favorite second level hearing, where you can explain why you were late. If it's medical reasons, sometimes they remand it back to us, and like I said, because they are not part of our office, we have to hear it for that year. Medical reasons or
Posted overseas.
Posted overseas, the military, a lot of theirs, they get their stuff late, and then it's filed late, but because of that reason, 9 times out of 10, we go ahead and accept it within our office.
but you always get that letter to appeal why as to your being late for it, so you would have that opportunity.
So one of the questions, and I think I'm going to make this one the last one, was, are the assessments intended to be fair market value? And yes, they hope they do. So the next question that I almost always get is, well, does that mean that if I'm selling my house, is the assessed value the value of my house? It is for a hot minute, and a hot minute only. Because the further we get away, the more market pressures are going to raise or lower prices. So your assessment, that's once every 3 years. And we know what happened over the last 3 years with our property values. Just as a reminder, your property assessment is phased in over 3 years. So even though you may have been like me, you had a 26% jump, I'm not going to see that until the 3rd year. The 1st year, they're just going to raise it a little bit, and then they're going to raise it the 2nd year. And then the 3rd year, it'll hit the full amount of your assessment. So you combine that with the homestead tax credit and maybe some of the other tax credits, and hopefully you're not going to be hitting too much payment shock. I'm going to give Wanda, you want to say anything here at the end?
No.
Nope, you're good. I think that we're going to call it a wrap. It's been a little bit longer night than I thought we were going to have.